everybody. Just getting set up. We have a fun guest today, Jenna from the UK.
Hello!
You made it across the ocean. That's pretty good.
That was so cool, yeah.
And I'm so excited that you're here. Can you just introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Jenna Byrne. I'm here in Stroud in Gloucestershire in the Cotswolds in the UK. So yeah, a long way away from you.
Yeah.
I live here in a cutesy little cottage with my husband, and I've got two little girls, aged 8 and 6.
Nice.
Yes, I'm kind of like full-time mum and part-time art journaler.
You get them both in. Time for a little bit of everything. I was just talking with somebody, a friend of mine, earlier today, and we were like, we make time for creativity. We actually show up to be better moms and wives and women and better friends. So I'm glad that you haven't given up on it.
No. Well, I've really had to find ways of just weaving it into life. So I tend to like carry my journal around the house with me, and so it's there in the kitchen. And I love mixed media because you work in layers, and so you can just do a squiggle and that's enough, and come back to it later and write something, and or slap on a bit of collage, just snatch 5 minutes here or there. And that's how I go, really. You've got to take what you can.
You do, and every minute counts. Every layer counts. That's a great little encouragement. And the cottage that you mentioned, is that the cottage you've posted a few times on Instagram?
Oh, I think probably you're thinking about the rather large manor house that I did a retreat at the other day.
You did a retreat.
Yeah, no, unfortunately that is not where I live. my place is much more modest. But yeah, no, that's a beautiful, beautiful place. And I led 10 lovely ladies on an art journaling day retreat there a couple of weeks ago.
I bet that was special.
Precious, yeah. Just a real privilege that they choose to spend their precious time with me doing that, really, because it is precious time, I think.
And how did you happen upon art journaling? How did you get involved with that to start with?
Amazingly, about 12 years ago, I was prescribed art by my GP for a chronic pain issue. So really ahead of its time, a kind of art on prescription idea. It wasn't art therapy. It was literally an artist brought along her art supplies, and she let me play with them. And it had been a long time since I'd done art in any form, really. I've always been kind of crafty, but I've always kind of felt there was a bit of a tension between my creative self and the serious business of my faith. So I kind of felt that it was quite frivolous, I suppose, to spend time doing creative stuff. I've since changed my mind about that. So it was a really amazing world that opened up to me, that I could create without worrying about the finished product, without worrying about what anybody else thought. It could just go in the bin at the end of the session. And I just discovered this new kind of freedom in my creativity, and the whole world of mixed media art journaling. And it's not something I invented. Lots of people do it. You do it yourself, obviously. Yeah. So I started following various people online, and what was interesting is that they often talked about this inner voice, maybe, that seemed to kind of talk to them off the page. And I thought that was really interesting as a Christian. I thought, could I explore art journaling as potentially a way to pray and to talk to God? People do art journaling for all sorts of reasons, from all sorts of backgrounds, and some of their spirituality is very different to mine. But I really wanted to try and see if it could be part of my relationship with God and spending time with Him. And I did, and I think it works. And so I've been sharing that. I share it on YouTube and here on Instagram. how I talk to God and express myself to him, and also try and listen to what he's saying as well.
Yeah, you have some really nice, I think it's like 10-minute art journaling prompts.
Yeah, I wanted to do that because, you know, a lot of people say, you know, don't have time, don't creativity, like we were saying. So I just wanted to show that even if you have a few minutes, it still can be precious time with God.
We were talking about having some actual journal time today, so to kind of share your recipe. So and recipe doesn't mean everybody has to follow the same one. This is just the method that you found that's been helpful, and you're generous enough to share it with us in case it might be helpful for any of us.
So this is my smaller journal. I also work in a A4 journal. So this is my recipe. It's very simple. There are kind of like 4 ingredients that I kind of mix up, and you can start anywhere, and you can just do 1, or you could add 2 or 3. So the ingredients are journaling, by which I mean just writing out your thoughts, perhaps in a prayer form, or literally just kind of a free flow writing. Play, which can include, you know, anything: paint, print, stencil, collage, doodle, mark making, anything that you enjoy doing and is relaxing for you. That's in the play box. Images. So I often use magazine images, but if you're good at drawing, you could have a go at that. But I tend to not have the time or inclination to do such things. So, you know, using things like collage makes it just really accessible for other people. And then words, sort of separate from journaling. I think my words often, they don't have to, but they often come kind of at the end of the process, where I'm trying to sum up what I feel God is saying to me, you know, at the end of my creative time. So those are like just my 4 ingredients that I use, and I'll show you what I mean by them, I guess.
I love what you said about the words. It incorporates that listening aspect of what's the message that's coming through this? What is God speaking back to? Because conversations are two-sided.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Absolutely. So here's a page I did just the other day. This is my latest YouTube video. So you can probably see there's some journaling here in the background with a silver pen, just kind of scribbled. Those are actually words, although they're pretty illegible. But those are my thoughts down on paper. I played a bit with some finger painting here and some collage that I stuck on. This image, or this icon of a sun here came up for me. And then the words I added at the end were, how do you filter the light? So I was really thinking about how each of us is reflecting Jesus to the world, but we each do that in a very different and unique way. So that was my thought that came out of that process. And you can kind of see on my YouTube video a bit more about how that came about. I have started with a bit of journaling already on this page. You don't have to start with journaling. Like I said, you can start anywhere. You can start with play. You can start with an image that has spoken to you. I mean, what is a journal? A journal for me is like a kind of secret diary. And it's a secret place with God. So it's kind of like a meeting place, a secret meeting place where you can go and spend time with God. And so I can tell God my secrets here. And I can even write them in a way like this. That, I mean, my handwriting is pretty illegible anyway, but, you know, you can write in a way that if someone was to discover your secret diary, they wouldn't necessarily be able to read it. So I tend to write in a very kind of scribbly way. And then that just becomes a kind of layer in the background, a graphic kind of element on the page, but it's not actually something anyone's ever going to read. But God knows what it says. And I think initially as a Christian, I felt kind of nervous about expressing my emotions in a authentic, honest kind of way, I guess, before God. You know, I think we sometimes put on a bit of a mask, a bit of a Sunday best mask, and is it a bit self-indulgent to come to God with all this emotion? You know, in some of our Christian traditions that sort of clashes a bit. But I think, you know, you read the Psalms and you see how David just poured out his heart to God. God actually commands us to cast all our worries and our burdens on him. And I think it kind of, this process is like a kind of emptying. It kind of helps get me out the way as I kind of like just, write how I'm feeling, and, even what my day has held. I kind of feel like I'm just laying that all out before God for him just to take that from me. And that then creates space for me to receive from him. So I think it's a really important part of the step. So I've done a bit of that already. It's nice to use kind of different types of pens. Some of them may be even water soluble. These are colours. Do you use these guys?
I do. I love them. They're one of my favorite things for backgrounds. You can write your thoughts and everything, and then you can add water. And I've actually gotten in the habit of using just plain white paint to activate them as well, like watering down just a little, because it doesn't soak through my journal pages as much.
Yeah.
It creates a really lovely color, and I love that idea of the secret journaling. This between me and God, and the different texture that can leave behind.
It's really nice, isn't it, just to kind of like feel like those words are washing away, and that they're almost like being sent up to heaven as you kind of, add maybe a little bit of water or a little bit of paint. And I just think that's really beautifully, symbolic of the fact that, what Jesus did really on the cross, that he came to take away all our burdens, our grief, our sin, or, anything. We can just dump it at the cross, and, he loves us that much that he will take all that from us. And then, you can just go for it, really. You can add a little bit of paint, and that's going to cover things up still further. I'm moving into play now because I'm getting my paint out and my fingers look.
I love that.
So it's like, just relax, and I think play, again, like I was saying, you say, it's part of my Christian practice to play, and I think some of us feel like that's kind of not allowed, and we should be doing more serious things like preaching the gospel and healing the sick, and all that obviously is like really cool, important stuff. We're totally for that. But play is like part of what it means to be human, I think. And, it helps, if nothing else, it helps relax us. It helps us to be still before the Lord. I find it, I've found before discovering art journaling, I think I found prayer really hard. The idea that I would sit in silence for a long time without moving, and I felt like I was almost the opposite of still inside. There was, whereas if I'm actually can do something that is very meditative and tactile and relaxing, that I feel like, if nothing else, this helps me just to be still before the Lord and have that time with him. And of course, it's, you can probably tell me more about this than I know, but, it's activating all that right brain stuff, and, helping us to connect with God, with our imagination, with our intuition. I think a lot of our faith can, in some streams, can be very left brain, Bible study and teaching and logic. And, I'd love for us to be whole brain Christians and to have more room, perhaps even in a corporate, I use this mainly for my own individual devotional life, but in a corporate context, to allow for that creativity and, that way of connecting with God as well. There's a verse in, you may have heard this before, Jen, but there's a verse in Isaiah 26 verse 3, and it says, "You keep in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts you." And the word mind, have you heard this before? The word mind actually should be translated creative imagination.
I did not hear that.
Yeah, it's a different word. Yeah, it's a different word for mind than would normally be translated as mind. And what it actually means is you keep him in perfect peace whose creative imagination is stayed on you because he trusts you.
Wow, it's another level of power.
Yeah, it's so cool. I loved it when I heard that for the first time.
But it reminds me too, when you were talking about, left brain, right brain, all the different levels, upper, mid. I was just talking with last week's guest was talking about how art activates that lower and mid brain that we tend to kind of neglect and shove to the side because it's not the analytical, give you the answer right now side of the brain. But the verse is about how the Holy Spirit groans for us, even when we don't know how to pray. And I was thinking this is a really good way to tap into all of that.
Yeah. I think this is a kind of groan, really. It's like it's kind of like a language that God has given me, maybe because I wasn't so good at praying otherwise, It's His grace and mercy on me.
Right.
So then, moving on to images, I would just flick through a magazine, and I know you did a lot of this last time with Bevy, just going through a magazine and just positioning yourself before the Lord and listening to that still small voice, that little prompting of a word or an image that jumps out at you that you're like, yes. I mean, it's not even a conscious thing, is it? It's just sort of what moves you. Yeah. And I would usually probably pull out quite a few, maybe 10 different images. Mm-hmm. And then I would look at how they, I just was instantly drawn to this image today, probably because of what we were talking about, being still before the Lord. And I just love how neutral it is and how clean these sheets are. I mean, an image speaks 1,000 words, doesn't it? And it's going to say something different to you than it would to me. I used to make stashes of images for use at later time, but I don't do that anymore because I think it's a very now thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think it's what God wants to say to you today in this moment, and so it's nice just to do that little exercise and respond to those feelings. And I'm already thinking, how Jesus washes us white as snow, and how just how beautifully clean this is and tactile. And this to me is an invitation here, isn't it? It's the empty chair, inviting us to have some quiet time with God. So, you might see something completely different in that image, or have chosen a different image, but it's not hard really to kind of see straight away Bible verses that come to mind, and the Bible promises that the Holy Spirit will remind us of everything that Jesus has said, and I think that's what happens. You get these kind of little reminders coming through. So I would kind of stick this on the page somehow, and then moving on to like the words, I might cut out a Bible verse, or even if I just feel like God's saying to me just one word, it might just be white or stillness or something. I might just cut that out of the dictionary. I've got a little dictionary. So, or I might just add a little phrase with some letter stamps or something like that to try and sum up in a phrase what God is saying to me on the page. Does that give you an idea of how I roll?
I love it. That is really helpful. I love watching it come together, and it's interesting how even the colors that you had picked when you're playing, I see some of them reflecting in the magazine image as well.
Yeah, I think often I do choose the image based on the colours, and then sometimes I didn't have to sit very long at all with that one, but then sometimes just sit with the image for a little while, and I actually have a sheet of questions that I can send this to you, Jen, if it's any use.
Can I send that out to people in the newsletter as well?
Of course you can, yeah. So like, my husband once took the mickey out of me. He said, do you, if you see a picture of a dog, does that mean we need to go out and buy a puppy? And
yes, and always yes.
It might be literal, but you don't have to assume that it is literal, and you can explore the image literally. You can look it up. You can look up that dictionary definition, but then you can think about, as I call it a conversation with God. I guess it's kind of a conversation starter. So start chatting with the Lord. Does this image evoke any memories of people or places? Is it a metaphor? Does it symbolize something else? Does it describe what God is like? Does it describe what the kingdom of heaven is like? What mankind is like? What you or your situation is like? You know, check in with your emotions. How do you feel when you look at it? You know, this is has a real sort of emotion around it, doesn't it? Very, for me, a very peaceful, sort of still contemplative kind of mood around it, which I was really drawn to. You know, do any Bible verses spring to mind? And so it's the start of a little conversation with the Lord that can kind of help you with your prayer life.
Yes, those are awesome questions. Yeah, I always think going at it with some of the left brain questions are really helpful at the end.
And that sort of kind of helps you come, I guess, to the point where, you know, you can sort of say, yes, I feel, Lord, that you are asking me this question, or you're saying this word to me. And sometimes you don't get to that point. I think that's really important to say as well. You know, sometimes you get here and you're like, Lord, I don't know what this page is about. Like, you know, I don't know if you have that, but yes. And I think that's fine, you know, as well. Like, I think sometimes he's doing a work in us which, you know, we don't understand on a rational level. I think, you know, on other times I come back to pages ages later, you know, months or even years later, and sometimes, you know, they speak to me. This page back in 2019 with these black circles on, which then I didn't kind of feel easy with them, and then I did these kind of patterns on circular patterns within the black circles. Basically, what I found out 6 months later is that I was drawing coronavirus, and these things were kind of flooding into the landscape, and I'd drawn them on my how they look under the microscope. And so it had been this kind of like prophetic thing that I'd done. I'd given up on the page because I was just like, I don't like it. I don't know where it's going or what it means. I'll just shut my journal and move on, and that's fine. But it was only later that I understood what it meant, and I was able to pray over that. And I actually put red crosses over each circle, praying against the virus last year. So it's amazing how God can reveal stuff to us, and we don't even understand what it is or what it's for until maybe much later.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you bring that up right now. I'm going through the Bible with some friends this year, and we're in Zechariah right now, and he's talking about all these really strange visions. He's like, I don't know what they mean. What do they mean, Lord? Same thing here. It might not be in our dreams, but sometimes things pop out and we're not quite sure, and the meaning is revealed later. And then that's cool how you're able to pray. There was this conversation with God as you were journaling, and then again, like there was another layer to come back and pray.
Yeah.
So cool. I was curious do you have a couple more minutes?
Yeah, sure.
I saw one of your posts about a prayer nest that you stitched, and I was curious, if just real briefly, if you could explain that little process, because I thought that was really cool that you brought the thread and different fabrics and stuff.
Oh yeah, cute. Well, that was just a really meditative thing, really, to do. It's just I'm not a sewer. I couldn't make a dress or a skirt, or you know, but I think there's something really comforting about stitching process. You know, it's a lovely metaphor for putting things back together, isn't it? And connection, and just like the thread that is Jesus, that, you know, through the whole universe, really. And so, you know, it's nice, I think, sometimes just to get a bit of thread and to just really slowly stitch together whatever you've got, really. I mean, this is my small folder. I actually don't tell anyone, but I actually have a whole wardrobe of this kind of nonsense. We had to buy a wardrobe because I just can't throw anything away. But you know, I keep all little bits of, you know, things out of the recycling, and bits ripped out of magazines, and you know, wrapping paper, and all kinds of bits and bobs. And I think actually in the one that you mentioned, I started with a photo of my family, and I stitched a kind of nest around them as a kind of prayer for protection. at the time. And prayer for protection has been so important, hasn't it, over the past couple of years? And sometimes you just feel really helpless in the face of things like pandemics and war and whatever else is going on. And I think to stitch slowly, to breathe slowly, and to lift up. It could be a photograph of your family. It could be a map of your local area. It could be anything that represents someone or some place that you want to praise and protection over. Yeah, it was just a kind of thoughtful way of doing that, really.
Yeah, I just love the idea of using the images. And when you mentioned map, I was thinking of some people go on these prayer walks. You ever done any of those?
Yeah.
And I'm like, for anybody who can't get out or feels a little helpless where they are, grab pictures, grab maps, and do some journaling, or if you want to grab some stitching.
Yeah.
And just to have that visual and the tangible actions as we pray. You don't have to have fancy words, but things come as you sit there with God. So.
Yeah, totally. And sometimes, again, either, because of physical pain or mental illness or whatever it is that people are battling with, it can be really hard to string sentences together. I sometimes I get migraine, and I can't pray in sentences when my head feels like it's about to explode. But there's something about kind of either just smooching some paint around, or maybe some stitching that I can do that helps me to connect with God without relying on that kind of, I have to be rational about this and make an argument to you, Lord, about why you should protect my family, or, which we kind of find ourselves getting into, don't we, when we use words? And what's that about anyway? I think it's like a lot of journaling is about letting go, isn't it? It's about letting go of control, letting go of perfection, letting go of what other people think. And I think those are the things that are also important in our faith, to say, Lord, it's not me who's in control of this situation, it's you. And I'm going to be okay with that, And if we can be okay with paint dripping all over our pictures, then that's just a small, tiny step towards us being okay with the way that things might seem a bit messy in the world otherwise, and still trust that God holds it all together.
And that comes back to that verse you read earlier of he keeps our minds in perfect peace with him, but we have to hand it over.
Yeah.
And it's in that release, that I think you said earlier too, the emptying out and making space to hear what he has to say. That's powerful. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be super serious.
No.
You can do it in a playful way.
I think moving from that journaling into the play does help you kind of move from that place of taking yourself very seriously into perhaps more peace and playfulness. Yeah.
And Jenna is generous. She's going to send me a copy of her questions that help prompt her along here as well, with using art as a way of praying and being with God and hearing from him. So if you want that, sign up for my newsletter at Hope and Healing at Home, and then you can connect with Jenna online. She's got great YouTube stuff, and ask us any questions. I'm sure either one of us will be happy to respond. So, thank you again, Jenna.
Oh, thank you for inviting me on. Thank you.
Yeah, it was really lovely.
God bless.
You too. And everyone have a nice day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.